Hello, everyone, and welcome to Biohackers Lab. I'm your host, Gary Cohen, and on today's episode, I have Chris Cornell. Chris is a health coach, fitness advocate, and a passionate voice for sustainable lifestyle transformation. At 60 years old, Chris is stronger, fitter, and healthier than ever, bench pressing over 300 pounds, running marathons, and continuing to inspire others to reach their full potential through nutrition and fitness. Chris's mission is to show that building muscle, maintaining fitness, and achieving health goals are not only possible after 50, but critical to long-term quality of life. Chris, thanks for coming on for today.
Oh, thanks for asking me on, Gary. I appreciate it.
No worries. And just for anyone who's listening to this, I've been actually watching your tweets for years now. You've been vocal on Twitter, or X as it's called nowadays. And especially lately, I find a lot of your posts inspirational and motivational myself, where you get to share your story. You're raw, you tell it as it is. And so you show the struggles, you show as we were talking there in the intro, the weightlifting, the bench pressing, the squats. I love it. Someone who does resistance training like myself, I find it, I don't know what it is, but when you watch others doing amazing things like you, knowing the weights you push, it's pretty impressive. So I just want to say well done for that. But where I want to actually begin, we didn't talk a little bit about your backstory, which is the most important part. So you, just to give someone listening here, in 2018, you were in your 50s, early 50s, and you weren't in a great shape, is what basically it was, and you had too much weight, and you went on a big change for that, and you had struggles along the way. So if you wouldn't mind just maybe introing someone, what was old Chris? Where were you when you were in those early 50s?
Okay, when I was 51, that was back 9 years ago, so I'm 60 now. I stepped on a scale at my mother's house. I was visiting, and I went and used the bathroom and stepped on the scale, and I was stunned. I hadn't stepped on a scale in probably several years, maybe partly because I was afraid of what I would see. And I saw the numbers 278 looking back up at me, and I had no idea that I had let it go that far. It was really an epiphany, I guess. I was like, I can't let this go on. I have to figure out how to solve the problem. And I became dedicated to finding a way. It took me a while because I had been struggling to lose weight on and off for decades. It was something that was a bit of a roller coaster for me. I wasn't always obese, but by the time I was 51, I definitely was in that category. And I had always been told to eat less and move more. And the move more part is something that is a great recommendation for people that want to be fitter, stronger, and have a better quality of life. But it doesn't always, it usually doesn't work out real well as the primary lever for sustainably losing body fat, at least in my experience. So from that point at age 51, it took me, I guess, I made some progress, but it wasn't until the early January of 2018 that I really found a sustainable way to lose body fat, and that was a transformation in my life.
Mm-hmm. And what was that moment, that big dietary change? Because I know we've both been in the low carb community for a long time. So was it a low carb lifestyle that was the big difference for you?
Yes, it was. I had been, up until that point, I was trying to lose weight with calorie restriction, which for me, I'd had some on and off success, but it was usually short term, and I almost always gained all the weight back after my willpower gave way. And I was in the process of losing weight around that time when I reached out to a doctor friend, and I realized that I wasn't going to last much longer, that my willpower was starting to weaken, and my body was starting to weaken. I was suffering from fatigue and muscle loss, feeling cold and just not well, even though I was losing weight. So he advised me to give the book by Gary Taubes called Why We Get Fat a read. And in the book, Gary talks a lot about carbohydrate reduction. And some of the things that were in there really made sense to me for the first time. And it was on January 14th of 2018 that I officially started my low-carb diet. It was at a Mexican restaurant. I was there for my daughter's 16th birthday. And I had chicken and cheese instead of the tortillas and chips. And my diet begun. And then I basically continued to lose 5 or 6 pounds a month, month after month, until I reached my goal weight, which was about 205. I actually continued losing more weight after that because it was so predictable and honestly relatively easy compared with anything that I had experienced before. And so I got down to probably about 196 before realizing that I was probably best off back up a little over 200, especially with my strength and muscle goals, which I've really achieved a lot in that area after losing the body weight, and I also have gotten a lot of improvements in the cardiovascular fitness.
Mm-hmm. So where you are now, all these years later, and also being a health coach, what would you tell old Chris around nutrition then? Has anything changed for you?
Well, let's see. There's a lot that has changed on several different levels. First of all, I think it would have been, I would have loved to have learned about low carb, and probably even, beyond low carb, something that I've found that is critically important to sustain, um, I say weight loss, but it's really fat loss. I think there's a big distinction, especially when we realize that how important muscle and muscle mass is. We don't want to indiscriminately lose weight, but the idea that you can control your hunger and cravings by learning how to achieve a good level of satiety is something that a lot of people don't understand. And it's something that I had honestly never really experienced before changing the foods that I ate. For decades, I would leave the dinner table, quote, full every single night, but I never understood how or why I needed to achieve satiety, which is absolutely different, in my opinion, than feeling full. Full means that you ate a lot of food. Satiety means that you're not suffering from hunger, from cravings. Your attitude towards food becomes indifferent. Um, you live your life. You don't have your brain filled with feelings of where am I going to get more food, and that is a transformational thing to experience. And once you learn how to achieve satiety, or I shouldn't be so presumptuous that it's exactly the same for everyone, because everyone does have individual experiences, and that goes for satiety as well. But for me, learning how to achieve satiety was a life-changing discovery.
And I see one of your most satiating dishes that you like to share a picture of is burgers with cheese on top. Is it? Am I correct?
Yeah, a bunless beef burger, and I usually put cheddar cheese in a nice ample quantity, and then because I want to enjoy my food, I put salt and pepper, some spicy brown mustard, some hot sauce, maybe a few pickles and some onion slices and a slice of tomato, possibly some avocado or a fried egg or two. But basically, high protein, healthy fats, and excellent satiety.
Mm. And would you say that was also one of the big differences, was that you upped your protein compared to what maybe you were eating in your early 50s with the lifestyle change?
Absolutely. and I can talk about this later. I developed a set of rules, simple rules, which I think are also very important. And one of my rules that I figured out early on was to find a protein target that I would go after every day. And first I had to learn what that was for me, what the target should be. The number that I arrived upon after some trial and error was 200 grams per day of protein, and that goes along with one benchmark that a lot of people in the protein, the nutrition world, who are experts in protein, suggest that 1 gram per pound of desired body weight is a reasonable target. Now, that's not an absolute by any means, and different people will have different targets, but I found it to be very essential to hit that protein in order to achieve a good level of satiety.
Mm-hmm. And the one thing we didn't touch on, which I also know would be really interesting to hear, is that you had a cancer diagnosis as a part of your weight loss journey. And when you go through cancer treatment, I mean, that's really hardcore on your body. And so how did you manage to get through that event too, after losing that weight and not yo-yoing out of it?
Okay, well, yes, I was diagnosed with cancer a few months after hitting my goal weight. And I guess I was officially diagnosed in October of 2018, and I began chemotherapy and radiation treatments in the middle of December of that month. I think I was in excellent physical condition when I entered treatment, and I think that was very important for getting through it as easily as I did. It was not an easy. It was 6 weeks of daily radiation treatments to my mouth, throat, and neck. I completely lost my sense of taste for a period of time, which was a extremely unpleasant experience. It was a depressing feeling, and it completely sapped my desire to eat. I lost 30 pounds, and this is, let's see, I probably started my chemotherapy. I deliberately gained a few pounds beforehand, trying to avoid what I knew was going to happen. I knew that this was going to. Everybody told me I was going to lose weight, and so I probably entered somewhere around 207, and I went down as low as 183, and I actually had to miss at least one round of chemotherapy, have it postponed because of my weight loss and my some of my low levels that showed that I might be at risk if I did the chemotherapy. And they had me meeting with a registered dietitian on multiple occasions, trying to coax me into eating more food, but it was very difficult to do that. And they try to get you to eat, foods like Ensure, high sugar, high calorie foods. Unfortunately, I was trying to keep with my low carb diet anyway, but at that point, all foods became unappealing for a period of time. So it was a struggle.
Yeah, well, having known someone who's gone through chemotherapy, all I can say is, well done to you to get through that. Seeing what it does to someone is really hard. So, we've touched on nutrition for a little bit, and we'll definitely touch on it more, because I want to talk about your experiment that you've been doing and you've shared also when it comes to your 800 calorie drink to break your fast in the morning. But when did you start exercising too as a part of your journey? Was that early on in the weight loss, or was that only later on that you got the stimulus to go what you're doing now with the resistance training?
I had been doing for the couple of years prior to finding low carb, I had been doing some resistance training, not a very good organized plan. I did some very simple things like bench press, and I wasn't able to do pull-ups or body weight dips, partly because of my weight, and also I wasn't anywhere near as strong as I am today. But the success I was having losing weight definitely increased my motivation. It improved my sense of my self-esteem. It improved how I felt about myself to the point where it was a big motivator in getting me to do more. And as I started to lose body fat, the work that I was doing in the gym started to become more apparent because it wasn't covered. My muscles weren't covered up by gobs of body fat. So it was very motivating. I started getting pretty serious that first summer when I was getting close to, and then ultimately hit my goal weight. And I remember, going to the gym more regularly to the point where I was going, 4 or 5 times a week, and putting in effort and spending a little more time trying to understand what types of routines would produce better results. I reached out to, I learned a lot from that first reaching out to that doctor I told you about. I learned that there's people surrounding us every day who know more than we know and have experience dealing with the same challenges that we're trying to overcome. And I went from being a person who tried to figure out everything on his own to someone who was no longer afraid to ask for help. And that was a critical change in my behavior. And now, I've gotten myself in the fortunate position to be able to reach out to people that are not only more knowledgeable than me, but world-class experts in their field. And doing this, there's a lot of ways that you can access this information. I mean, this stuff isn't all hiding behind a vault. You can learn how to be a good curator of information and how to find answers to the challenges that you're facing. And all of a sudden, things that seem impossible, like for me, running a marathon, I mean, that was a ridiculous thought when I was 51 years old. And when I was 58, I ran a marathon with my wife and my son. It was an experience I'll never forget. One of the best days of my life.
Well, congrats on that one. And especially what you were talking about with the pull-ups and the dips, or just being able to move your own body weight. I think those kind of stories for me are also inspirational, motivational. And as you said, I think anyone listening to this podcast right now, hearing your story, will be a part of that, listening to someone else for that inspiration to maybe take that first step, which is why I wanted to speak to you. And how long did it take you until you could do your first pull-up? Because that was one of your metrics, saying I couldn't even do a pull-up. Like, how long did it actually take you till you got that strength to move your own body weights? Something simple like that.
Well, it's a really interesting question. I was going to the gym with my 2 boys. And so they're now, they're both graduated college and out living on their own. But at the time, they were probably, one of them was in college, the other was like towards the end of high school. And I was going to the gym regularly with those 2, and they were both able to do body weight pull-ups. And I tried, and I couldn't do one, but there was a machine only a few steps away from where they were doing pull-ups, and it was a pull-down exercise machine where you can select the weight you want to pull down, and there was a bar that allowed me to perfectly simulate a wide grip pull-up or a chin-up, and so I would just see what they were doing for reps. So if they were doing 8 reps of pull-ups and chin-ups, I would select a weight that I could do approximately 8 times. And my drive was to keep increasing that weight over time. And sure enough, the weight was going up, and at the same time, my body weight was going down because of my new nutrition plan. And I was becoming incredibly motivated by the idea that I could see those 2 points coming together to where I could almost predict when I would be able to do a pull-up. And I completely remember going over there and using all my might to do one good rep of a pull-up. And I was like, that's it. I'm on my way, because before I couldn't do one of these. Now I can. It's only a matter of time before I drop 5 more pounds and I get 5 pounds stronger. I'm going to be able to do 2. And it was, only a couple months later, I was doing sets of 4. And then I was doing, I completely put the machine off to the side, and I was just doing like 3 sets of 4 pull-ups and 3 sets of 4 chin-ups, or whatever. Sometimes it was 5, 3, 3, or whatever. But once you can do a few, you are operating in a new world, and your motivation just goes through the roof. And it's quite something when a formerly obese man is now doing body weight chin-ups and pull-ups. And I have so many people have reached out to me specifically with that question: how do I do it? And I basically lay that out as one of the options. You can also use resistance bands to take some of your body weight off of the pull-up or chin-up. There's a few other little strategies that I've seen, but there's methods to being able to do this. And so yeah, that was a very gratifying thing. And I went through the same process with body weight dips. I went from not being able to do 1 to being able to do 30. It's the same guy. It's just different behaviors, and definitely a different mindset. And you start to realize that there's so many things that we put off in that impossible category that are not impossible.
Mm. And what I love about it is that self-empowerment that is unlocking a level within yourself. You can carry yourself now. And as you said, it must be so satisfying when you unlock that level again. And it's something I think we all were able to do as a child, and then suddenly we realize we've lost it as an adult potentially. And to regain that function is so nice. So personally, I must admit that's something I also, which is why I love watching your X account for inspiration, because I lost that ability. I'm going through dead hangs and trying to improve my grip strength and all the same kind of shebang, basically, because I realized I just deconditioned myself. And so it's not just about benching and doing all the heavy stuff. It's about even just carrying your own self. And so there's philosophical things and just health things that you were explaining there, which I find so motivational around this. And I think especially for anyone listening, you were in your early 50s and you were still able to do this. It's not like, oh dear, I'm after the age of 50, I've lost it, I'll never get it back again. It's still achievable. You can still go after that goal.
Yeah. I part of my work is I'm a writer, and I used to write for clients in areas other than fitness, nutrition, and health. Now, a lot of my writing is in those specific topics, partly because I enjoy it so much. And I've had the opportunity to talk to not only experts like practitioners, dietitians, nutritionists, and fitness coaches, but I've also had the opportunity to talk to individuals, much like myself, who have had really successful experiences. And I've learned, that there are so many people out there that have done amazing things. I mean, we read stories, but a lot of these people are just regular people like you and I, who one day eventually either found what was holding them back or changed their mindset and started taking steps to achieve what they thought wasn't possible. And I'm talking about people that were on the verge of, alcoholism, on the verge of maybe taking their own life, who are now running ultra marathons, not drinking for years, and helping other people follow them, on that same path. People that have cured type 2 diabetes, and that's a controversial term. Maybe some people don't like the word cured, but reversed all the symptoms of type 2 diabetes and are now living completely healthy lives. Doctors who are helping people do exactly that. I've had the opportunity to meet with and talk to type 1 diabetes patients who have managed to achieve completely healthy blood sugar levels through changes to their diet. It's just amazing. And the physical accomplishments that some people have been able to achieve. I mean, like I ran a marathon in 4 hours and 38 minutes. I know people that could, beat me by an hour or more, and some of them are no youngsters. They're like, there's people that are achieving so much more than I would ever imagine that I could achieve, in different areas. But you use these people to tap into their knowledge and to figure out, what they're doing, what has been successful for them, and take what you can and implement as much of it into your own life as depending on what your own goals are.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, Chris, that you're a part of that group now. I see you help to inspire others to make change now, which I think is healthy and good. So again, well done on that.
Thank you.
I'll go back a little bit now to something I mentioned earlier, which is also interesting, is your health code meal replacement experiment, and how one of your ways that you personally manage your health is you fast until a certain time in the morning, and then you break a fast with a meal replacement shake. But you've doubled that right now. So would you mind just explaining how did you get to that point that you thought you were going to use a meal replacement shake to break your fast and then also double it basically in the morning?
Well, first, a quick background on the fact that for about 5 years, I was doing time-restricted eating on basically a 16-8 or 17-7 schedule. So that means I was eating within a 6 or 7 hour window. Usually that was between like 1 p.m. and, well, the rules that I set up were basically that I would not eat before 1 p.m. and I would not eat after 9 p.m. So technically there's 8 hours in there, but normally I was eating within a 6 or 7 hour window. So sometimes I would not eat until 2 p.m. and many times my last food was much earlier than 9 p.m. So I did that for 5 years. So I wasn't eating any food in the morning, and I was doing just fine with that. And then many people in the resistance training world suggested that I would see better gains if I ate some protein in the morning, spread it out a little, because I was eating all of my protein at 2 meals, and 200 grams of protein. If you just split that in 2 meals, you're eating about 100 grams per meal, give or take. So I publicly was sharing my experience adding a protein shake around 10 in the morning. And it was interesting. I was just using just pure whey protein. And so it was essentially 100% protein, no fat, and no carbohydrates. And Ben Bickman, who I had met previously, and I had interviewed for an article, he weighed in on my post and suggested that I consider including some fat with that high protein meal. And after doing a little bit of research, I figured out that he was actually the guy that invented the formula or developed the formula for Health Code. So that's a product that is, I guess his brother Joel is the CEO of Health Code. Ben, I don't believe, is any longer connected with, it doesn't have a financial involvement with the product, just to be clear. But Ben was the guy that suggested I consider taking fat with my meal. So rather than continue with the whey protein, I decided to do an experiment with Health Code. I like a lot of what, very, very much like a lot of what Ben has preached about insulin resistance, the importance of keeping, retaining or restoring your insulin sensitivity. So I decided to give it a shot, and I ended up adding a double serving of Health Code, which is 800 calories, with 54 grams of protein and 54 grams of fat, and those are healthy fats. I was adding that to my day daily, and I did it for 100 days and noticed some really successful results. And it's hard to quantify exactly what is causing what, but certainly it was a beneficial experience, and I wrote about it. And after seeing my article that I wrote about my experience, Joel Bickman reached out and asked if I would do a testimonial, which I said, sure, I absolutely am a believer in the product. And by the way, I don't have an affiliate arrangement with Health Code, and I don't make any money for if anyone purchases the product. But the testimonial ended up leading me to doing a television commercial for them. They literally sent a film crew to my house, filmed me doing a day in the life, which included running, included lifting, included some of my work life, and included me preparing Health Code. So I just passed the 250-day mark about a week ago, and I've decided to make Health Code a permanent part of my activities moving forward. Happy to answer any other questions about Health Code, but the important takeaway, the most important takeaway is not that I'm trying to convince anyone to take Health Code. It's that we are in control of our own lives, and we are able to do experiments on what works and what doesn't work. And we can see the results if we're careful and we observe, and we can make continued tweaks to what we are doing. So if we want to eat in the morning, we can try that. If it has adverse results on our weight or body fat or anything else, we can stop. We can reverse that decision. If it works well, we can double down and make it a permanent part of our life. So that's the takeaway I want everyone to have is, you can just follow the recommendations from the U.S. dietary guidelines or any other nutritional body that studies population results, generally of people that are not particularly healthy. And the recommendations are fairly low bar recommendations, or you can experiment and try to achieve something much loftier than what the average person is achieving.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's exactly what this show is all about: is N=1 experimentation and just finding what makes you live the best life that you can live. So, thank you for that tip. And would you say then, just personally for yourself, because I understand the protein part of things, but you also feel like the healthy fats, that's a 1-to-1 ratio nearly there, basically, is what you've been taking. And so it's either the protein in the morning, but also then the fat for fuel potentially too, which is giving you a little bit of a boost maybe.
Well, the fact is we all need energy. And it's probably not advisable, at least in my opinion, to try to get all your energy from protein. That's not really the way the body was meant to operate, in my view. So you're going to need to get some of your energy from. Well, we also know that the body needs a minimal level of fat just to survive. That's not true for carbohydrates, but you absolutely need some fat just to exist. I've found that hitting a certain level of those healthy fats is essential for me to get to a good level of satiety. I've experimented and I've tried. I did the whole high carbohydrate thing for decades. I've experimented with all different types of food. From you name it, I've tried it. Chili, chicken, pork, beans, lentils, pasta, bread. Like I've tried everything I could think of. I've tried grapefruit diets. I've tried all sorts of things, and I've never found food combinations that provide better satiety for me, other than ones with, high protein and a good level of healthy fats. And I honestly think it's essential that each person who struggles with, obesity or storage of excess fat, that you figure out how to achieve a good consistent, predictable level of satiety in your life, because without doing that, I don't think that the rest of it works. Efforts to lower your calorie intake are just extremely difficult, if not impossible, if you can't figure out the satiety element.
Mm-hmm. And just keep you on the topic of satiety, I see that you and Dr. Einfeld have a little bit of courteous back and forth on X around this particular topic. So you do feel the satiety component, just feeling satisfied with the food that you eat, reduces the hunger and potentially the overeating or the eating of maybe unwanted kind of foods. Is where have you landed with this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. Um, I I think satiety is critically important. Dr. E has launched the Hava app, which I know you spoke with him in one of your episodes, which I listened to. Um, his model is based on satiety per calorie. I think um, satiety per calorie is an interesting idea. His model relies on assigned values that they've assigned for every food. Um, my one question about satiety per calorie, as defined by their model, is um, it it doesn't seem reasonable for me to assume that fats and carbohydrates are interchangeable for everyone. I think that sometimes you could achieve a high level of a high satiety per calorie, but if you're not truly experiencing um, a good sense of satiety in your body, your efforts to control your calorie intake are not going to be sustainable. So my basic thought about it is you need to understand how to achieve satiety before you can fully take advantage of any system designed to make the process easier. Without satiety per calorie means nothing to me.
So if you're coaching a potential client around this particular topic, so they've come to you, and how would you explain satiety to them, like practically, when they're trying to eat different foods? Like, what would be the way that they would go, that's giving me satiety? Is it just the feel? Are you just trying to get the feeling within them, or just trying to think how you would coach someone around that?
Well, let me start off by explaining that it was like in February of 2018, about a month after I started the low carb diet, I was in a restaurant and I ordered a bunless cheddar burger, and it had some of the fixings on it. And after finishing the meal, and we were just chatting, and I was actually thinking about ordering more food instinctively because of the past decades of my life, all of a sudden I was just distracted by conversation. And then I realized that I had this incredible feeling of absolute satisfaction. I mean, it was almost euphoric. Maybe that was partly because it was the first time I had experienced this. I wasn't hungry. I was content. I wasn't full. I was just satisfied. And
Wow.
that's the feeling that I try to describe to people. And it can be difficult, because if I were to say, here, have a bunless cheddar burger, and you were to eat it, and for whatever reason you didn't feel the same way that I just described, then I would be like, all right, so what can we do for you that's going to get you to that point? Maybe should you have another one, or should you experiment with a different set of foods? Most of the people that I know in the low carb community end up achieving pretty excellent satiety with a ribeye. People have different things that they like to pair it with. Of course, there's going to be preferences involved. Ribeye and broccoli, ribeye and spinach, or asparagus, or some people just prefer to have two ribeyes and no vegetables whatsoever. But the idea that you can feel satisfied and content without feeling uncomfortably stuffed, and and I've, said many times that, I think I've said it earlier in this conversation that, for decades, I would leave the table feeling uncomfortably stuffed. And, that would leave me with digestive issues, all sorts of discomfort, which is not what you're supposed to be associating with food. I mean, food is supposed to fuel you. It can provide you with enjoyment. It shouldn't be a cause of misery in your life. And that's what it's gotten to the point of for so many people. If I was coaching somebody, I would try, number one, I would ask questions like, what foods have you tried and which foods seem to provide you with the greatest level of contentment, and the least amount of discomfort. And, I would encourage them to use that as a starting point, and then consider experimenting. Now, if a person is set on doing a more high carb way of eating, that's further outside of my experiences. I'd have probably a more difficult time trying to guide someone on that path, but I would still advise them to use trial and error to, if you find something that works, definitely write it down and go to it often. It's not an accident that I have about 250 pictures of bunless cheeseburgers on my phone, and that I can whip that out and show people at any time. I want to prove to people that is a solution for me. Doesn't mean it's going to work purely for everybody else, but why not, use some of those things that other people have succeeded with as a starting point for your own experimentation. And in coaching, and I mentioned to you before we got on this call that I'm a health coach. I'm a Primal Institute certified master coach. I'm a metabolic health practitioner certified and accredited by the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. I've got a lot of training, and I've learned that coaching is about helping the client develop their own path, their own, figure out their own plan. So my goal is to facilitate, ask questions that help them get to that point, help them, figure out a plan and how to make it sustainable through accountability. And, and then, we continue that relationship. And so if I didn't mention, I'm health coaching on a part-time basis within the Ovadia Heart Health practice, and I've been really enjoying and getting a lot of satisfaction out of that. It's a great organization that I'm working for, and really making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, well, that's the rewarding part, is seeing someone improve in their life. And I think the takeaway I'm getting from what you were telling me there, Chris, is consistency. So what I'm thinking about there is, we're creatures of habit. I know myself, so I tend to like to eat the same type of breakfast, the same type of lunch, and it's just finding those meals that you will end up being a creature of habit, like with your bunless burger, that just works for you, and it's easy to sustain within your life, to keep consistent. And if you do that, then you get the results from just implementing that consistency around things, when we're talking around nutrition.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's funny. I've heard 1,000 times that a low carb way of eating is overly restrictive and unsustainable. And that's when I show the album of cheeseburger pictures. They're all done differently. They have different condiments. Every one of them was delicious. And I'm free to choose. Like, if there's a night when I am no longer in the mood for a double bunless cheeseburger, I can have chicken or I can have turkey. I have that option. There's a reason why I keep coming back to some of the same foods over and over again, and it's because they produce excellent results for me. They give me a good sense of satiety. They make me feel good, and I enjoy eating them. So when you feel that way about your diet, it's neither overly restrictive or unsustainable. It's exactly the opposite. And yeah, I do come back consistency for the things that work. What's bad in this world is when you consistently do things that don't work. You consistently do things that lead you to the same dreadful outcomes. But when you find something that works, why not come back to it over and over again?
Yeah, exactly. So you've made a dramatic change. You've lost the excess body fat. You've gained muscle. You're much fitter. You're much stronger. What is your next goal? Do you have something that are you looking just to maintain this, or have you set yourself another personal target that you're going for?
Well, I'm about to put another half marathon on the calendar. That doesn't break any new ground for me. I've run two official half marathons, and I've probably run a dozen half marathon distances in training over the years. But I know for my overall state of cardiovascular wellness that having another half marathon on the calendar will keep me going and keep me logging the distances that I want to for my health and overall quality of life. I'm thinking about, at age 60, I would like to see if I could hit any more PRs, in pull-ups or body weight dips or bench press. Not sure if that'll happen because, age does play a role in this. But I'm very, very pleased with where I am and where I think I'm going to be continuing over the next, hopefully, decade or longer in terms of keeping things going. I do take care to try to avoid injuries. I allow myself more rest and recovery than I used to, which has been a really good move. And I try to pay careful attention to not doing anything stupid in the gym that's going to hurt me. As far as other goals, I think some of my goals right now, I've just finished up some extensive training with Primal Health Institute, and I'm looking forward to really reaching new levels in terms of my ability to help other people. So I've done a lot in the last 6 months along those lines. But now I really, I've already started working with people within the Ovadia health practice, and I really want to, see how many lives I can help change. And I do have some goals with respect to writing a book and writing some longer form articles on a couple of topics, including satiety and a couple of other aspects. I'd like to write some more on fitness, but those are some of the goals that I have in front of me right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I'm just thinking, because weight is always the big one first, like that's the big goal. But once you achieve that, what keeps someone going, what keeps someone motivated to keep going too. So, and you've done it for so many years now, which is fantastic.
One of the, I've had the opportunity to talk to so many incredible people, and of the practitioners that I interview, one of the questions I try to ask everyone, if I have the opportunity, is just about what you were just talking about in terms of how to help someone sustainably incorporate these changes into their lives. And I ask practitioners, what factors do you find to be the most determinative of whether someone will succeed or not with their diet or with their fitness plan? Because that's really important to me. There's people in my own life who I would love to help change. Incidentally, when I went through this coaching program, one of the biggest and first impacts that it made on me was it changed certain aspects of how I deal with myself. It taught me how to ask questions in better ways, and I made some changes in my own life just based on, making things more optimal. It opened my eyes to the possibilities of optimizing your own situation. That's one of the things, how to help people sustain change is like what drives me, what makes me want to get up in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So we're nearing the end of the conversation on this one. So I'd like to just give someone your 6 rules for simplicity and success. Do you want to just go through those 6?
Yeah, I think if I don't have them in front of me, but I think the rules as I laid them out had to do with not eating after 9 p.m.
Hmm.
Originally, it was not eating before 1 p.m., and now I do 10:30 as my AM limit. I eat 200 grams of protein per day. I do not eat more than 90 grams of carbohydrates per day. I greatly reduce, on the verge of elimination, added sugars, grains, refined carbs, and seed oils. And I keep high protein, high satiety foods on hand and available to me at all times. And what I always say when I share those rules, because those rules have gotten a great deal of engagement on social media, but what I'm very clear about saying is these are my rules. These are not your rules. But my rules could be a great guide for someone else who is trying to set their own rules. You may find, I think most people could benefit from a protein target, maybe not everyone, but I think that everyone should consider that. I think a lot of people should consider whether or not to have a carbohydrate limit. Meal timing, that can be very effective. It's going to be different for different people, but, eating at midnight or 1 a.m. can be a real sabotage of your nutrition plans. So you look at those questions that I've answered with my rules, and use whichever ones you think could help. The goal with a set of rules, though, is keeping them as simple as you can while still being effective. You don't need necessarily 100 rules. If you can get by with 6, that's better. If you need 10, 12, 15, do what you need, but make it as efficient as possible. And you should be able to articulate, like I just did to you, what your rules are. You don't necessarily need to answer everybody else, but you should be able to recite them for yourself, because how can you follow a path if you don't know what your rules are? And then finally, you need to ask yourself periodically, are my rules working? If you're getting the results that you need, that you want, that you desire, then something is working. If they're not working to your satisfaction, it's usually because of one of two things. One is that you're not following your rules, and you've got to do a better job adhering, in which case you've got to ask yourself, why am I not adhering? And the other possibility is that your rules are not, they're not at where they need to be. They're not as effective. And so then in that case, you need to change your rules until they are working. So that's my setup with the rules. And I think everybody should be able to articulate what they're doing, what their plan is. I carry mine with me in my wallet on a business card sized piece of paper, and I've shared them with many people. And I've, over the years, I've had probably dozens of people send me back the rules that they developed, and they're always different, but there are always some similarities to what they started with.
Well, thank you for sharing your personal rules. As you said, I think a great inspirational point for someone to start from somewhere, and not feel overwhelmed. And that's always the goal, is don't feel overwhelmed. You can take that first step today. So I just want to say thank you so much, Chris, for sharing your personal experience and everything that you've let us know about today. Where would someone be able to connect with you or find out more if they wanted to?
I think the two very best places to connect with me are on X. My handle is Biggest Comeback. And you can find me on Instagram. My handle there is Chris S. Cornell. Then the other place, and you can find the link in my X bio, is my weekly email. It's the Biggest Comeback email. Not only do I write the email and share some of my thoughts on an ongoing basis, but I also respond to questions. People can just ask a question right back to the email, and I try to respond to everyone in a timely basis. So that's how I think most people connect with me.
All right. Well, thank you so much again for today, and I look forward to following all your adventures on X.
Hey, Gary, I really appreciated being on. It was a great conversation. Thanks for having me.